Welcome to the Recover You podcast. I'm Kylene.
And I'm Patrick.
We are a couple in recovery
from sex addiction
and betrayal trauma. Together, we share our story to encourage you on your journey. It's here that we talk about sex addiction, betrayal trauma, mental, emotional, and physical health, faith, and anything and everything needed to recover you to your most authentic self that God created you to be. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Recover You. I'm very excited to have a guest on today. Welcome, Kaija.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Today, we're going to talk about something I think is a super great topic for betrayed partners, and that is the idea of cultivating safety and learning to trust yourself. Because after betrayal, it really feels for a lot of us like we can't trust anybody or anything in the world, much less ourselves, because we didn't see this coming. And so I saw a video that you made a couple weeks ago talking on this topic and sharing your personal journey with it. And I thought, let's share this with the world. So thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, I could talk about this stuff all day. So thanks for inviting me.
Amazing. Okay, so let me give you a quick intro and then we'll sort of jump in. Kaija Dawn is a relationship coach specializing in sacred intimacy, nervous system regulation, and relationship energetics. She helps women trust their nervous system and intuition as their wisest guide to create relationships that feel like home. I love that. I love that it is so focused on that intuition piece and the nervous system piece. I think those are absolute keys to our long-term healing. So I'm super glad and excited to talk about this today. Would you maybe start just by sharing a little bit of your personal story and journey and anything that you wanted people to know about who you are kind of coming into this topic?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I just want to say that I am you. We are the same. I feel you. I see you. I am you, because I have been in a relationship before where there was a lot of deep betrayal, and the trust, the respect, the safety was eroded over time in, death of 1,000 cuts, and also from some really big experiences as well. And the reason I focus so much on intuition and nervous system safety and cultivating safety in relationships in general with first yourself and the other is because I lost myself completely in a 13-year relationship with my ex-husband, who happened to be an addict. And he had a variety of different addictions that started with gambling, and then it went into alcohol, and then it went into opiates, and then it actually progressed into heroin. And so it was a really wide array of things over a lot of years. And it was really scary. It was really dysregulating. It was really just confusing. Like I said, I lost myself in that because I grew up in a religious background and I love that. It was great in a lot of ways. And I was really kind of confused a little bit on like, how much do I give this to God versus how much do I listen to myself and like have these like day-to-day moments of like complete dysregulation and unsafety, like I was talking about. That just it was kind of just confusing. And going into speaking with him and also learning to listen to myself, it was just this dance, right? And over time I had done a lot of counseling and research and talking with other people and praying and all of these things to ultimately just come to the realization that I was not myself anymore. I was not at home in who I was. And so in that relationship, I had gone completely deaf in my right ear, and I had lost a baby at 5 months due to the internal stress that manifested as physical symptoms. And after I'd lost my baby at 5 months, I was like, okay, I know what is actually being communicated to me, and I need to listen to that. And it was this really catalytic moment that I'm still devastated that I could have a 5-year-old little boy right now, that I don't. But at the same time, I recognized his sacrifice and his purpose in my life was to help me come back home to myself, into that nervous system regulation, into that intuition. And also, to really set a new standard in my life for the kind of relationships that I want to have, the type of person I want to be in a relationship, the type of communication I want to have in a relationship, and so on and so forth. And so that was really like hitting my lowest point, that has spurred me on this path of, spiritual life coaching, relationship energetics, intuition, coming home to ourselves, all of the things that I, have alluded to multiple times already. Those have just really formed who I am today, and the work that I do with other women as well, to really cultivate that safety within themselves and do some really deep listening and deep inner work that then ripples out into their relationship with their partner, their work, their body, and really most importantly that I love is like with their children as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing all of that. One thing that you said specifically that perked my ears up was this idea of how much do I give this to God versus essentially take action or listen to my own intuition. And that's such a, that resonates with me because I am a Christian, have a faith background, and also work with a lot of people that have a faith background. And some of the things that my husband and I will talk about in the recovery journey is being aware of, we want to make sure that we avoid the concept of spiritually bypassing the work that we need to do by saying, well, God's going to take care of it, because sometimes he takes care of it by giving you that intuition, by giving you that nervous system, by giving you someone else to lean on or to get advice from, and or an action to take or a boundary to set, right? He sometimes works in those ways. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think that's a universal concept sometimes that we struggle with, like what part is mine? So I don't know if you want to maybe share even a little bit more about your thought process around that, because I think that's kind of that's a tough one for a lot of people to kind of go, how do I take action on this? Which piece of it is mine to handle?
Yeah, it can be tricky for people because I feel like it's not black and white, and it's very subjective to each individual and your own experiences, your upbringing, your current situation, your relationship with religion, your relationship with yourself, your relationship with your partner, everything. And so my biggest realization that I feel like I came to is I have expended all of my other resources. And so now it's like, what is the experience actually showing me? What are the deeper lessons being taught here? If I have given it to God and done all these things, where's my power? Because I think a lot of it is like, exporting your power to either him or other people, counselors, family members, podcasts, books, YouTube videos. Like, you're constantly seeking answers outside of yourself. And so whenever you've expended all of those resources and you've done all those things, finally you have to answer that call that's coming from inside the house. And like you said, he gives you this intuition for a reason. And at some point, instead of spiritually bypassing that intuition after all these years, like, the answer. I think it's just about, are you willing to own that and listen to it and move forward with it?
Oof, that's a tough one sometimes too, right? Like, maybe knowing I do have the answer. Am I ready to take action on whatever that is? Yeah. And that sort of goes into something that you have talked about as well, which is this idea of trying to intellectualize the experience and, trying to intellectualize what to do versus metabolizing it and absorbing it and feeling it in your body. So I think that's also kind of, I don't know if it's universal and that everybody experiences it, but I know a lot of people will try to logic their way out of things, right? We're clear thinkers. We have the education, we have the awareness, we've gathered all of these things, but we're still in pain. We're still struggling. The relationship is not improving, whatever it might be. And so it's like, when I talk about subconscious work and healing and some of the deeper tools that we use, I'm like, man, if we could logic our way out of some of this stuff, we would have done that a long time ago.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, to me, intellectualizing versus integrating really breaks down to masculine and feminine energetics in an aspect of my brain, right? And so the masculine is very logical. It's very structured. It likes to problem solve. It likes to, like, point A to point B. It's going to be this thing that will get us there. Let's do that. And so again, that's all of the research. That's the external searching. That's all of that. But then the feminine is the felt. The feminine is the emotions, the expression, the subconscious, like the deep intuitive listening. And the ego fears death. And I bring this up because whenever you're intellectualizing and you're taking action in that masculine energy, your ego has something to feed upon. However, when you slow down and you go into the feminine and you go into the felt and you allow yourself to feel emotions and sit with yourself, you're really kind of putting the ego in the back seat a little bit, and you're letting your true intuition, your true consciousness, your true heartfelt self come through. And that feels scary. Slowing down feels scary. Feeling your emotions is scary. Really going there, acknowledging your truth, being honest with yourself, allowing your truth to just take up space rather than repressing it and shoving it down and pretending it doesn't exist and staying busy with so many other things in that masculine energy. It can feel like death. And it's also a point of liberation, because you're shedding light on that darkness. You're shedding light on the scariness, right? Like, you're going into your subconscious. And like with you and with the work that I do with women, we can provide these containers and these spaces to actually go into that, into the felt, because it takes time. It takes work. You're having to put down your guards that are so comfortable and familiar to you, that venturing into, those spaces that don't get as much light shed, it's scary. And whenever you do it, it's like you have these biochemical reactions in your body that are liberating. And we talked about this previously in our last podcast too. It's like, whenever you get out of that dysregulated state and you start to regulate and you start to go in there, your body's going to respond by maybe getting sick or having a fever or getting a headache or whatever, because you're allowing the emotions to be processed. It's energy in motions, or what emotions are. And whenever you allow that to flow through you, you might have those like negative manifestations physically that come up. But on the other side of that is light. It's liberation. It's love. It's having your heart be broken so deeply that all that is left is love. And that's really, truly what I experienced, like with my miscarriage, or, any like true low point in my relationship, whether that was with my ex or even with my current partner or even with my daughter or with myself. It's like, ultimately you just hit this bottom to where you're like, I finally see it. I finally get it. I finally take responsibility for it. And I am filled with so much love and gratitude for what it's taken for me to get here, that I get to move differently in the future. I get to be better. I get to relate differently. I get to view the world differently, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think some of the things that you're alluding to as well is how intelligent the body is in its desire to try to communicate. It's to us, like, what is, you had mentioned this before in your story. Your body knew before you did. And that's sort of what, when you're talking about intellectualizing versus integrating and listening to your nervous system, you're like, my body was like trying to communicate something was wrong. And I kept trying to think my way out of it, or understand or educate my way out of it. Or one of the examples you use too is communication. I think this is a great example because, again, this is something I hear a lot from betrayed partners is, if I just try X, Y, Z, right? Like, it's like I have to get to the end of my rope of attempts that I can make to solve this problem that isn't mine to solve. Mm-hmm. And when you are at the point where you feel like you're walking on eggshells, or you feel like you have to think about 10 different options to communicate something so that it's received well, I think that you're probably at the same time going to be experiencing some sort of signals from your nervous system that maybe this isn't healthy.
I mean, that's everything. Mm-hmm. Walking on eggshells, nervous, heightened nervous system, thinking that you have to do X, Y, and Z. We are pattern recognition machines, and we are also, really primal beings when it comes down to it. Like, our brain and our body and our nervous system are ancient, and they are constantly scanning our environment for threats. And, that's on a spiritual, emotional, and physical level. And so we're taking in all of this information all the time, like 11 billion bits of information all the time, but only like 5% or less of that is actually consciously processed, right? Like, we would literally explode if we were able to process all of that at one time. Right. And so, in addition to that, it's like there's a pattern that's running, right? Whenever you're walking on eggshells, thinking you have to do X, Y, and Z to make it work or whatever, it's like there's this pattern that's running. And the more aware we can become of the pattern of what our body's communicating with us, what are the thoughts that are associated with this pattern, what are the beliefs and behaviors that come up in this environment, like Maybe it's your partner that puts you on eggshells, right? And you just feel unsafe because you don't know how they're going to react to something that you say or something that you do or whatever. That is beautiful information for you to start to become more aware of, because we are pattern recognition machines. And whenever we can start to recognize the patterns that are playing out and take more of an objective perspective on it as best we can, which is a skill, but it can be done, absolutely. The better that we can separate ourselves from that emotion and that story, and we can start to see the deeper message that's actually being conveyed to us. Mm-hmm. And then from there, we can cultivate that safety within ourselves, and just little bits at a time that create this compound effect.
Yeah. And I think I agree. And I think the example you sort of gave was, you came to this point where you realized, I do know how to communicate. Like, I don't need to read another book about it. Like, I actually know, and I do communicate well. I just maybe need to be really truthful with myself and with others now in my communication. So that was an important shift for you. And I think that's like it's huge, right? It's like, because that's coming back into yourself versus this idea of like, let me think about this. Let me change this. It's all external, as opposed to what is really true in my life, and coming into that knowing and that intuition. And I think people sometimes are afraid of their intuition. Like, I can't trust it. So can you maybe how did you learn how to trust it?
From not trusting it for too
you were like, this pattern isn't working for me. Let me try something different.
Yeah, essentially. And it comes down to trust and safety, because essentially that's what's happening whenever you're not listening to it is, oh, they know better. I still have something wrong with me. That's really the deeper message that is like the negative aspect that's being communicated is, oh, there's something wrong with me. I'm not doing enough. I haven't done enough. I need to do more research, You lack that self-trust. But whenever you can recognize that, okay, this isn't working for me, like you just said, and you start to tune back into your intuition that has been talking to you all along. It's been guiding you all along, and it feels really good when you listen to it. It's very soothing, but it is scary, because oftentimes that means that, okay, my behavior is going to have to change. My relationship's going to have to change. The way that I communicate is going to have to change. The way that I believe in myself, the way that I perceive myself and talk to myself and treat myself is going to have to change. And even though it's the thing that we want most in the world, again, we run on patterns most of the time. And so we have to consciously and subconsciously, through the work that you and I do with our women, is break that pattern through the awareness and then reestablish new ones through repetition, just like the other one was set in place before. It's getting your reps in all the time. It's a beautiful practice that continues to unfold. But the more that you come home to yourself and you value yourself more than you value other people's opinions or perspectives, and you really trust yourself again to honor and listen to that intuition, then that creates this beautiful ripple effect of raising your standards, making value-based decisions, taking care of yourself in all of these different ways that really just create more harmony first in yourself, that then extends into your relationships with everyone and everything.
How do you think, I guess, what were some of the tools and resources that led you to the decision to leave? And then what do you think brought you to that point where you were like, I've done everything on my end of the street, and this is not something that's going to serve me or my child long term. And so I'm going to, because that's hard. I think a lot of people stay when they have children just because they have children, right? And so coming to that point of saying, hey, it's actually a good decision for my health and my family's health to separate from this relationship. So what was that decision-making process like for you?
So, gosh, where do I start? Really, I had done a lot of work with listening to Tony Robbins, Mel Robbins, just Brene Brown, really doing a lot of the education on my end and trying to shift my mindset and all of these things. And then I had my miscarriage, and I knew that I had given that to myself. And so I experienced a lot of postpartum depression and anxiety because it was COVID. It literally happened in March of 2020 as the world shut down. And so I was isolated with him and our daughter. And I had a few friends, but it was COVID at the same time. And so I really had to go into myself, and I started journaling, and I started sitting outside on my back porch every single day and reading and crying and journaling. And I just did that every single day because it was kind of all I had.
Mm-hmm.
And within that, there were these waves of like, why are you so emotional? What's wrong with you? And I just started to recognize, like, girl, you just had a miscarriage. You are like living through a pandemic. Like, you have experienced so much trauma in life that like, I just started to see the ways that I was being mean to myself. And I made a list of all of the negative beliefs. Like, you're not good enough. You suck. You're unworthy of love. Of course, this happened to you, blah, blah, blah. Like all of the garbage that I would say to myself. And I wrote the opposite. And I would just read that all the time, just started to flip that script. I also did a lot of inner child healing and meditations. And really that brought up a lot of forgiveness and acceptance, because before that I could not accept myself or the decisions that I made or how I got myself in this situation. And, how dare I do this to my daughter? And, all of that, like I just couldn't accept who I had been and, the decisions that I made. But when I started to do that, then I could forgive myself. I forgave myself for all of the decisions, for doing the best that I could do with the resources that I had. I just started to connect the dots in that reflection, going back in time and doing inner child meditations and work with that really supported me. And I started going to counseling as well, like desperately needed that. And that counselor had me do a values exercise of really identifying what are my core values and how did those inform my decisions. And I remember doing that. I was sitting in the living room and I had just finished it, and I told my ex-husband, I was like, hey, I just did this exercise. Like, I'm curious if you would want to do it, figure out what your values are. And he was like, I know what my values are. I don't need to do that. And just kind of totally dismissed me and like shut it down. And I was like, okay, that is valuable information. My brain was like, well, that doesn't align with my values, to not have a partner who is like willing to even really engage in the conversation, And so
was that a new reaction for you? Would you have previously said, oh, maybe now was not the right time? Or like, would you have taken responsibility for that reaction in the past, do you think?
That's a great question.
Or was it just the awareness of like, I'm in the middle of writing this list and this is so clearly not with it?
I feel like the previous version of me would have been like, oh, I didn't communicate that well enough. Oh, I didn't approach him at the right time and the right moment, and just made myself the problem and internalized that shame and guilt and blame. But after, doing this work, I was like, oh, that's curious. Like, I think that clearly shows me that I want a partner who, does X, Y, or Z differently. And I felt really centered and grounded in myself. And I started doing things for myself that I hadn't allowed myself to do, like shop for myself, go get a coffee without feeling bad. I started to wear like yoga pants because he didn't really like that. And me having my body be seen by other men in tight pants. So I didn't wear them for like the longest time, for like literally a decade, like after they became cool. I know. And I'm
now you live in them, right?
Only. Yeah, basically. That
no jeans.
Yeah, I know. I wore jeans last week and I was like, what is this trend?
Right.
I know. And so it was just those little things. I made a vow to myself that I would fall in love with myself a little bit every day. And it was those little bits of coffee and shopping and going to a happy hour with a friend. And something big that I did that I had always wanted to do was, we live in Colorado, but I'm originally from Southern Oklahoma, and I live on a giant playground now. I want to go explore. And so for my 30th birthday, I was like, I'm going on a girls' backpacking trip and you're going to watch our daughter. Like, you can do this, and I just, I left him with that responsibility in like full safety and trust of him. Like, I don't know, even though he was an addict, like it wasn't until the very end that I felt scared to leave our daughter with him. But anyways, so it was falling in love with myself every single day in ways big and small that just compounded over time. And then really one of the biggest moments that happened was, again, he was an addict and he was addicted to pills for a long time. And I was putting away laundry one day and I discovered some pills in the drawer, in his sock drawer. And we were about to head out the door to my daughter's soccer game. And I brought them to him and I said, I found these in the drawer, and I totally accept that this is a way that you want to handle your issues. I love you always. I'm not judging you by any means. And this is not how I choose to deal with my problems. This goes completely against my values. And so I'm done. I'm done. And it actually wasn't that day that I like packed up and left, obviously, right? It's like a process. But that was a very defining moment for me was this is not my person. This is not how I want to live my life. I'm not going to continue to discover things that have been hidden from me. I want an open, respectful, reciprocal relationship that is rooted on health and vitality. And, what if our daughter discovered those, And so I have to look out for the biggest benefit of her. And so I don't remember again at what point in this journey it came to my awareness, but the line of doing what's best for me is doing what's best for all, that has totally supported me throughout this entire journey. And I full body believe that. And so that's really the biggest work that I've done to support myself through this process.
What a journey. And I think what you just shared of finding the pills, saying, hey, I accept you, I love you, and this is not working for me, is such a clear example of what like a healthy boundary looks like. Because I think sometimes there's a lot of messaging in the recovery community around codependency and things like that gets confusing for people, because I think when they hear I can't control my partner's behavior or recovery, sometimes that's interpreted as, well, I have no control. And if I'm with this person, then that essentially means I have no control over my choices in my life. And that's so totally not true. We get to set very clear boundaries, and they can be inviting the partner into a place of health, and they get to choose if they're going to do that or not. But I think that example is a really great one, because you got to the point where you were like, I know definitively that this will no longer work for me. And that doesn't mean I'm going to try to force you to change at this point because maybe you're not ready, but I'm telling you that this is where I'm at. And then I'm going to take action on that.
Yeah. And I think something that I talk about a lot with my friends or my clients is it is very important for us to be honest and to reflect back the way that we feel based on their behaviors or the things that they say, because a lot of people are just operating so unconsciously. And again, in these patterns that have these emotional stories tied to them that they don't even know what they're doing, right? They're offline. And so whenever you can come into this conversation or situation from this really grounded place of certainty on your end and communicate from an open heart that, hey, whenever you do this, it makes me feel this way, and I'm completely unavailable for this, or I would like to work on this with you, or whatever. It gives the person, you're literally holding up a mirror to them that they need to see how their actions and behaviors are affecting their environment and their most important relationships. And it can be a really catalytic point for your relationship to grow closer or to potentially have more division and separation. And so then from there, you two get to decide how you want to move forward. But if you are constantly shoving it under the rug, staying bitter and resentful, just letting it eat you up inside and literally cause cancer and thyroid issues and IBS and endometriosis, or, even you can get an injury on your knee or your ankle, like our bodies are communicating to us all the time. But it starts in the spiritual and emotional realm first. And the body's physical manifestations are the last to go, because the body is the most dense of all of our energetic bodies. And so really, if any of you listeners take anything away from this conversation today, I hope it's that it's in our spiritual and energetic world first before it manifests physically. And so again, it's really being able to communicate from your heart about how you truly feel and what you're truly experiencing, so that then you're kind of passing the baton off to the other person to see how they'll show up for you or not. And then from there, that informs how you move forward.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a really clear. I always say, like, if you want to speed it up, set a really clear boundary, because then you get the information that you need one direction or the other. Is somebody going to participate? Are they going to see you? Are they going to respond to that? Are they going to create safety for you? Are they going to get into recovery? Are they on the same, playing the same game you are? Not game, but like, do they have the same vision you are? Or are they going to totally just disrespect that and go, not for me? And, it's either way you get the information. And to your point, I think I want to reiterate that values piece of it, because I think that really does determine our ability to set boundaries really, really clearly, is when we are so aligned with what our values are and who we are as a human being and where we want to go in life. So I like to talk about you have to set a vision for where you want to go, because that's going to make it much, much, much more clear, the steps, the interim places that we need to work towards. But if we're sort of like, well, I don't know, because I think sometimes there's a little bit of the frog in the boiling pot where it's, well, I can tolerate this. I can tolerate this. You can tolerate a lot in life. That doesn't mean that it's good for you. It doesn't mean that you should be tolerating it. It doesn't mean that it's healthy. It doesn't mean it's helping you or your partner. And I think consequences and boundaries are one of those things, to your point, that can be a catalyst for them as well. If there's someone that's going to choose healing, consequences and boundaries often play a role in that, in their choosing to do that. But yeah, I think ultimately it comes down to, we're not setting them to necessarily force them into something they don't want to do. We're setting them because we say, this is what I need to live a healthy life and to be able to move forward, to your point, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually into a healthier place.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all of that is so important. And I think it really comes back to this sense of self-trust. Like, do we trust ourselves to not collapse in a difficult conversation? Do we trust ourselves to hold those boundaries? Do we trust ourselves to live into this higher standard of relating and living that we have set for ourselves, that our intuition is guiding us towards? Do we trust ourselves to maybe step out and leave this relationship because we know it's not only what we need, but maybe our children, like whenever I made that definitive decision that we are getting out of here, like me and my daughter are getting out of here. And it would have made so much more sense for her and I to stay at that house, but like too much damage had been done. Like I needed to get out of that environment. And so I was a personal trainer at that time and not making a whole lot of money, but I trusted myself so innately that I was like, I'm going to figure it out. And so I moved into an apartment paying $1,600 a month that I really didn't have, but somehow 4.5 years later, almost 5, I guess it's 4, but I'm still here. I'm still thriving. Like I'm doing it. I figured it out. And it comes back to that sense of self-trust. And so that's really, you have to come home to that and believe in yourself wholeheartedly to then move forward.
I'm so glad you shared that piece of it, because again, I think that is a very, very common shared feeling of the fear of the unknown. I may know that the situation I'm in right now is unhealthy, but I'm super familiar with it. It's the devil I know kind of thing. And I can manage because half a degree up or half a degree down, like I know how to handle this, right? I don't know how to handle getting an apartment, changing my whole life, not knowing where the next paycheck is. You know what I mean? There's a lot of fear there. And so I think that's super common. So I'm really glad you shared that, because I know in my mind, I'm looking at people that I know or that I work with or that are in these difficult situations. Like, you are so smart. You are so beautiful. You are so capable. And like on my side, I'm like, you can do whatever you want with your life, but us in our own heads, we get really small and afraid of like, I just don't know how this is going to go. So I feel safer with the familiar as opposed to taking that leap. And so maybe that is the invitation if someone's listening to this and really resonating with that, to do some of the work, some of the tools and resources that we've talked about, to work on that intuition, work on healing that nervous system, work on rebuilding that self-trust, or maybe building for the first time, depending on your life experiences, but really learning how to listen to that inner you, because it is very capable, very knowledgeable, very strong, and it is here 100% for you.
Absolutely. And I think, there's a couple of things that stick out to me in regard to this, stepping into the unknown aspect. The first one is, it's like a perspective shift, right? You can perceive it as, I don't have all the answers. I don't know where to begin. All of that is totally valid. And our brain and our bodies are doing that for a reason. And there's another reality available. There's another perspective available of, wow, my whole reality just exploded open. And it's really fertile soil for you to make your whole life what you want it to be, right? Like you get to choose. You are the conscious creator of your reality. And so it's like, sure, you can perceive it as constrictive and confusing and scary, or you can see it as expansive and beautiful and amazing. And like how many resources are available out there is mind blowing. Like I hit at my dad. I mean, thankfully I have a great relationship.
Start close to home.
Exactly. Start close to home. So I went with my father and he was able to help me out, which was amazing. But I also went to the Women's Resource Center locally here. And I had actually been in contact with one of the women up there a couple of years ago, but I wasn't ready then. Like I hadn't, quote unquote, done enough work on me. And so I stayed and I stayed and I stayed. And I finally called her and I said, hey, I am ready. And she was like, girl, I've been waiting on you. I have a check with your name on it. And I can't even begin to tell you how good that felt, you know, to just have someone who's been thinking about me and holding out for me and like loving me and trusting me that I could do this and wanted to support me in that. Also, I tapped into churches' benevolence funds. Churches literally have funds that are available for people in need. You know, they've helped me pay my rent or get groceries or helped me like take care of my daughter so that I could work. Local resources. You know, I went to the food bank. I am not too good to go to the food bank. You know, I hit up the soup kitchen. Like I tapped into those resources. I applied for grants. I, you know, did research on what's available out there for me because there's so much money and resources out there that a lot of people just aren't aware of. And so you just have to be open to seeking it. And also another big thing that I want to bring up, because I hear this all the time from my women is like this aspect of, oh, well, there's so many other people out there who have it worse off than me that I just shouldn't. And it's like, babe, you are just a human who needs help, just like other people are. And there's always going to be people who are worse off than you or better off than you. It's like, we can't play that comparison game. Don't compare your pain to somebody else. Ask for help, reach out, do the thing. Yes. And the second thing that I think about in all of this as well is like, we're all just little kids looking for love. We're all just little kids who are wondering, can we trust ourselves? Can we do this? Can I handle this responsibility? And going into that inner child healing and validating that little one inside of you who just wants to belong and feel safe and feel loved, of like, you're reparenting yourself. Like, I got you. I see you, baby. It's okay that you feel this way. It totally makes sense that you're scared right now or want this thing or da 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 da. Like, validate that younger version of yourself and go on a rescue mission, right? It's like, I got you. I'm going to hold your hand throughout this whole process. We got this, you know? And that has been a super powerful practice, not only for myself, but for my clients. Like every single one of them that does it, they were like, thank you so much. I cried so hard. I had no idea. I'm like, yeah, it's incredible.
I love that because I had a client the other day that told me that he was getting a little triggered and that he listened to some music and essentially, more or less, on his own did some inner child work. And I was like, I'm so proud of you. I was like, good for you. You just did that yourself. Like, that was amazing. And he's like, it was so great. And he was supporting himself in that moment. The hurt part of him, he was able to come alongside and give that support. And I was like, that is so amazing. I'm so proud of him for doing that. Yeah. And another thing you said too, being willing to ask for help. I just think I'm so glad you shared that piece of your story. It is really important, and we can't compare, you know, where we are versus somebody else. If you need help, you need help. And when you're applying for different things like grants or, you know, scholarships or whatever it might be, you know, there are qualifications usually associated with those. If you qualify, you qualify. So don't be afraid of taking that help. You know, if somebody says yes, or somebody wants to help you, or you ask a family member or a friend. When I got divorced, I moved right back in with my parents. Like, that's where, you know, I moved right back in. So, you know, it's okay. And I'm glad you shared that. So maybe just as we're sort of wrapping up here, where are you now after going through all of these things and doing all of this growth and making all these changes in life and now helping others? So what's life look like now?
I am so blessed. Well, with my ex and I, we have a really respectful, communicative, supportive relationship. I recently got engaged this last summer to the love of my life. He is amazing. And I called my ex and I told him, and he was like, I am so happy for you because we recognize that we're just little kids looking for love and we can support each other, and that our relationship served a purpose for us to both grow as individuals. And so I'm really grateful for that. And like I said, I'm with Christian. We've been together for 4.5 years and are going to be getting married in the spring. And we have a really beautiful family dynamic with my daughter. She's 8 years old. And I'm just so grateful that he and I get to model to her what a fun and safe and healthy relationship looks like. We live in Colorado. We go hiking and camping and backpacking. And I actually, before this call today, I called the Women's Resource Center, who's been so supportive in my journey. And I was like, look, I know that you have these different opportunities to volunteer, but I want to be more involved. Like, I want to be, whatever my most pivotal role in the community can be for the Women's Resource Center, like I want to do it. And so we set up a call for next week with the program director. And I'm just really excited to get more of this awareness and, connection of sharing stories and relating out there. And I do this work with my clients, going over relationship dynamics. I also use human design and gene keys in my coaching, which can be really just so precise with telling you what your unique energetics are, how you show up in a relationship, how it might dance with the other person's energetics in your relationship, the specific shadow patterns that you tend to, experience in the world that you're literally genetically predispositioned to experience, but also the gift and the highest expression that you get to live into, and really going deeper into what it means to cultivate sacred intimacy in your relationship by first cultivating that in yourself. So I love it in my world.
I love that. That's so exciting. And I love what you said about stepping into the Women's Center more as well. It's really exciting and really amazing to be able to give back, to be in a place after, them helping you, that you can turn around and help them as well. It's really amazing. So if someone is wanting to connect with you and they're resonating with everything you're saying, how can they find you?
So my Instagram is at I am Kaija Dawn. And I also have a podcast called The Woman Behind It All, where we dive into relationship energetics, spirituality, sacred intimacy, all of that. And so those are the places that you guys can find me.
Amazing. We'll put those links in the show notes as well. And then we just did a podcast episode on your podcast a few weeks ago. So I'll make sure that is also linked. I've shared that. Hopefully some of the listeners have already checked in, but we'll post that in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I had fun.
Every day is a new opportunity to choose health and freedom. Make that choice today, and we'll see you next week. Woohoo! If you're listening to this, it means you've made it through an entire episode. Part of recovery is spending time engaging in healing and self-growth activities. We are thankful that you chose our podcast to be one of those activities today. Make sure you reward yourself for that accomplishment. If you've enjoyed this episode or this podcast, we would love to hear from you. Please take just a few moments to leave a rating and review, letting us know your experience with Recover You. We not only love hearing how these episodes are helpful, but ratings and reviews help others just like you who are searching for recovery information and support find the podcast too. We can't wait to hear from you. See you next week.